What's up guys, you're watching Li-Fi TCG. Got a quick deck profile for you today on Legacy Death's Shadow. So, Death's Shadow is a card that I've played a lot in Legacy before. I had a decent result with it in GP Niagara Falls a few years ago. Day 2 and like min cashed at that tournament. But then you will remember that like pretty soon after that tournament was the era of like Dreadhorde Arcanist, Oko. So like pretty quickly the blue-black strategy fell off. And after a period of not really playing much Magic, then when I got back into Legacy, I did play like Rug Delver for a bit when Oko and that was legal. Then I've transitioned into playing Jeskai for a bit. Now I'm going back to trying Death Shadow and Legacy again. So basically the Jeskai deck I've been playing, the Angelo Kade or like Wiki on Magic Online, I think that deck is pretty solid. The issue I've found with it is that like not having Expressive Iteration is very tough in control mirrors. You can beat Delver's Expressive Iterations if you build your deck well enough, because you have like Narsets and things like that to be able to still like outcard your opponent. But when your opponent has like Minsk and Boo as well as Expressive Iteration and potentially like Uro and Narset, like it just taxes all your interaction way too much. They just have too much stuff you need to counter, and it's a bit too difficult for the Jeskai deck to deal with it. And I don't really like playing Expressive Iteration in Jeskai either. I think when you like the curve of your deck is much higher, then Expressive Iteration gets much worse, and I just don't enjoy playing like the 4-color decks with Uro and Minsk and everything. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm going back to trying Death Shadow, but I'm going to be using Expressive Iteration in it because I think that it's a very strong card and it's worth splashing the extra color. So I'll get into the list pretty quick. I have the 4 Death Shadow. I've got 3 Murktide Regent and 4 Baleful Strix as the creatures. So 3 Murktide might look a little bit off, but I remember in this build of the deck, these are the only creatures, so I don't have Dragon's Rage Channeler to mill more with the Surveil. There's also no Street Wraith in this build, which I'll talk about in a second. So it's a little bit harder to get the cards in the graveyard for the 4th Murktide Regent. Like it will too often brick by not having enough cards to delve away. And Baleful Strix is just a card that I really like. It's one of the best cards in the Delver mirrors. It's useful for poking down like Narset's Interferes and that. It pitches to Force. You know, it's just pretty solid all around. So happy to play 4. But if you don't like the 4 Strix, you can cut one for like a Borrower. I think that's fine as well. Yeah, so the reason not to play Street Wraith, firstly, it's like not a good combo with Expressive Iteration because you can't cycle it from exile. So anytime you play an Expressive Iteration and it reveals a Street Wraith, if you want to take the Street Wraith, you have to put it in your hand. So if you could flip off an Expressive Iteration like land, Force of Will, Street Wraith, like there's no way to use both the Force of Will and the Street Wraith. So in the like potentially in a late game situation, you have to take like a useless land plus only one other card. So that's a problem with Street Wraith. The other thing is that you don't really need the life loss. Like Street Wraith is one of the worst cards versus Delver, just because having a card you can potentially top deck in the late game that most likely does nothing at all unless you pay 2 life on it is a pretty big liability. So it's usually one of the first cards you brought out versus their matchup, which is one of the most important matchups in the format. So yeah, overall, I don't think the deck needs it. I've been not had any issues with the life loss. Having no Street Wraith. So the rest of the spells are pretty standard for the archetype. 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Ponder, 4 Daze, 4 Brainstorm, 4 Force of Will, and 2 Fatal Push. So because the deck is playing red now, I considered playing Lightning Bolt instead of the Fatal Push, like either 2 bolts or a 1-on-1 split, just because potentially going face is useful, and also like it can kill Minsk and Boo with the Enter the Battlefield trigger on the stack, which I thought might be important as well. But a much bigger issue is just the way that you sequence your mana development. Having the removal be black is much more important. Another thing is that Lightning Bolt doesn't kill Sheoldred, which is a card that people are playing now. So yeah, I think overall Fatal Push is just a little bit better. Oh, and the other 4 cards that I haven't shown you are the 4 Snuff Out, which in the past I didn't play 4 of this card. Because in the blue-black version, maybe you can say that it's like a bit more important to have Wraith, or like when you're playing just blue-black, you don't have EI, so there's not really like any card that's so good that you can put in those slots. So then you have to play Wraith, and then like you have extra life loss. That means that Snuff Out is not so viable at 4 copies because you have too many life loss that you like can't control. But overall, like Snuff Out is just one of the most powerful cards in the deck. It's like one of the main draws to playing this deck compared to playing straight blue-red is that you just have like a 0 mana removal spell that can hit Murktide or anything basically. And again, having the 0 mana spells that you can cast for free are very strong with Expressive Iteration, because you can like Brainstorm the removal spell to the top of your deck and then Expressive Iteration tapping out for it, and you can cast this for free. Very strong interaction there as well. And then, okay, so that's all the spells. And then for the lands, 1 Mystic Sanctuary, just for the getting the iteration back in the late game. Pretty strong to have access to that. 8 Fetchlands, don't get worried about which ones they are, just they have to be all islands, or fetching islands, so 8 Fetchlands, 4 Wasteland, and then I have 2 of each of the Shocklands, so 2 Watery Grave, 2 Steam Vents, and 1 of each of the Jewel Lands, 1 Underground Sea and 1 Volcanic Island. So playing 3 colors is a cost. It definitely makes the deck more weak to like Wasteland than the 2 color Delver decks are, but at the moment I think that trade-off is worth it. But I need to have like a slightly more games to evaluate. So yeah, worth pointing out that like playing 3 colors is definitely not free. The other thing that like if you're playing pure blue-black, I think you can afford to play a basic island, which gives you a little bit of protection versus extra protection versus Wasteland as well. I don't think you can really do that in 3 colors, but yeah, just like all of the black spells plus iteration is just such a strong combination that I want to keep trying it. Then onto the sideboard. So I have 7 blasts, so 3 blue blasts, 4 red blasts, just in the efficient interaction in the relevant matchups. Then I have 2 surgicals versus graveyard decks combo, 1 Force of Negation, just has an additional force versus like Chalice decks and combo and Life from the Loam, things like that. As my one grindy card in the sideboard, at the moment I'm trying one Kolaghan's Command, just as like extra 2-for-1 potential. It's another target for Mystic Sanctuary. You can get your Strixes back in matchups where you're trying to grind. It's good versus Chalice decks, so yeah, it has a lot of application. Instead, in the slot, you could use a different card, like Painful Truths might be okay as well. Black Market Connections is an interesting option, but that might not be quite right either. Like Sorin the Mirthless is maybe okay as well. Like or you can think about all of these different directions. Then that's another thing about playing the Grixis version, is that you can't really play Infernal Contract anymore, which is a nice thing about the pure Dimir version, but having access to Expressive Iteration, especially in game 1, matters so much more than that. I think it's okay. It's just like an interesting thing to think about. So yeah, one Kolaghan's Command, but that could maybe be a different card as well. And then the last 4 cards in my sideboard are pretty interesting choice, I think, and one of the other interesting aspects to playing Grixis is I'm playing 4 copies of Hidetsugu Consumes All. So this card got quite a bit of buzz when it was first released. I'll explain what it does. So it's a 3-mana saga, 1 black-red. The first chapter is you destroy all non-landed permanents with converted mana cost 1 or less. So that's like Chalice of the Void, Carpet of Flowers, all of there's a saga constructs plus whatever they search for with it, like Painter, Grindstone, basically every card in that deck dies to it. So it's like very good versus like prison decks and decks doing anything with weird permanents. The second mode is exile all graveyards, which is pretty marginal because like it's probably going to be too slow versus Reanimator or whatever, but like versus Painter or whatever, like that could be fine just to nerf their Goblin Welders for later. I might have previously just implied that this destroys Painter. It doesn't. I probably meant to say Goblin Welder. And then the last mode is that it flips. So you exile it and return it to the battlefield transformed. So it becomes a 3/3 trample whenever it damages your opponent, put a +1 counter on it. So basically my reasoning for playing this card is in the slot of like a Braid or Meltdown or weird things like that. So I'm not entirely convinced it's correct. Like it's entirely possible that these should just be those cards I just mentioned, like Meltdown or something. But I do like that versus the like Chalice versus Saga decks. Like destroying a bunch of permanents and then flipping into a threat seems very strong. The issue is just that like you have to think about what you're boarding out for it, because like potentially ETB blows up your Death Shadow, and like exiling your entire graveyard makes it harder to cast Murktide as well. But you can conceivably, versus like 8 cast, for example, you like cut all your shadows and all your Murktides, and you just board in like 4 Consumes All, the Kolaghan's Command, and then like all the Pyroblasts, for example, and your win condition is just like Strix Saga beatdown. Like I think a plan like that in those kind of matchups might be quite viable. And then versus the lands decks that kills all their Saga, but also their like Exploration Mana Bond stuff. Like if they're on the Field of Ruin plan, then like it kills all the zombie tokens and exiles their graveyard. Like I think the idea has a lot of potential, but I'm still need to play the games out to see how it goes. But yeah, that's the deck. So in summary, Expressive Iteration is a super busted card. Putting it in your Xerox deck powers it up a lot. I think that having access to the black cards is an upgrade over blue-red in some situations. You're weaker to Wasteland than straight blue-red is, but you gain tools in other areas. So yeah, that's the summary of that. Let me know what you think about it. Whether you think Death Shadow should just be blue-black, or you think overall this is just inferior to blue-red, or you think it has a lot of potential, or yeah, just let me know what you think. But I've been playing this in the last few events, local legacy events I've tried. I've been relatively impressed with it, and I'm going to keep trying with that, and I'll let you know how it goes. So, yep. Like, comment, subscribe. This has been Li-Fi TCG, signing out.